Are you someone looking to travel more this year using credit card points and flight miles? Well, keep listening as we discuss some lessons we learned and travel tips you can utilize in 2026. Hello, and welcome to the Wealth Minded MD podcast with your money best friends. I'm Dr. Alicia Taylor.
And I'm Dr. Brittany Halford.
And of course, we're here to help you build wealth and make good money decisions so you can create the life you desire with more control over your time.
All right, Alicia, as you said that teaser, right? You're like, lessons we learned. These are lessons that you learned, girl, because you know I have not been redeeming any credit card points. Actually, I have for a few trips, but I don't know if I've done them in the most strategic way. It's just like, okay, I don't want to spend cash, so I'm just going to use these points. But anywho, that's more for our financial focus. I know that you have something else that you're hoping to brag about and rub in my face. So let's just get it over with. Let's tell the people what you want to tell me.
Yes. I wanted to let the people know which school is better than the other person's school, and that is Duke beat Michigan. My beloved Duke Blue Devils, my alma mater, beat your alma mater, Michigan, in basketball. It was a great game, but of course, the best always comes out on top.
Oh, wait, what is Duke's record?
I think we have lost 2 games this
Mm,
season.
okay.
Yeah.
I watched part of the game.
You did?
I did.
Wow.
The story goes, as we're talking about, travel, we were traveling. We were at the Great Wolf Lodge. The basketball game was on. So Brooke and I were doing the rock climb, and KJ and Kevin were watching Paw Patrol and the basketball game. They had 2 separate TVs. And so that's how I saw that the game was on, but I did not see the outcome. And usually my husband tells me things like that, but he probably omitted it because our kids, they get so invested in these games, especially when it's the Detroit Lions or the Celtics or a team that really resonates with one of us. My husband likes the Pacers or Michigan. So I think Brooke would have been very deflated. So that's probably why he did not share the news.
It's so funny. It's so funny. Actually, I must admit that your school is actually very good. I think y'all only have 2 losses on this season. Of course, one of those came from us, but I think you're like 26-2 at the time of this recording. I think both of our schools are projected to be number 1 seed going into the NCAA tournament. A lot of analysts predict that we're going to get a rematch in the Final Four. Hopefully that pans out and both of our schools make it, and hopefully the same outcome.
Different outcomes, go blue.
We'll go blue as well. Yeah, because Duke is blue as well.
No, the true blue, the amazing blue.
Oh, goodness. There's a reason they call us the Blue Bloods schools. And I think that includes Duke and Michigan and Kansas and Kentucky and some of your historically really, really good basketball schools. And speaking of this time of the year, I've been watching a lot of basketball. It's March Madness time. It's one of my favorite times of the year. I know you could care less, but some of us, we get a lot of joy from this. But you mentioned that you were traveling when the game happened. You said the place, but I'm not sure like what area of the country you were in.
We were in Massachusetts. We just took a quick trip. The place is the Great Wolf Lodge. It is for children. It is not a vacation for adults, but I enjoyed myself, and so I always try to embrace my inner child when we have trips that are planned for the kids. And it was very expensive. I did not plan for it. So unlike Leisha, who budgets everything out and looks for credit card redemption, I'm like, okay, we got the cash flow. I see the money in the bank. We're going to give these kids a trip and allow them to have a good time. So, I'm still pondering on when we do it again, how to leverage some of the discounts and make it a little bit more affordable. But in this case, the goal was to have good time, and that was achieved.
Well, I'm happy that you and your family had a great time. I think it segues nicely into our topic of the day of like lessons we can learn from travel. You like to say you don't travel a lot, but you started this episode talking about how you were traveling with your family. And so clearly you were doing things right. Now, maybe you don't travel as much as me, but I don't have kids, so I can move around a little bit differently.
True.
But, I'm hoping that our audience, whether people listening have kids or don't have kids, that they can take away some travel tips and things that they can utilize for this year. So shall we get started?
Let's do it.
All right. So I took a lot of trips this year. A lot of them I utilized credit card points, but not all of them. But one of the common themes is that I usually got them at some sort of discount, whether it was me paying less in cash, whether it was somebody else paying for the trip entirely, or me utilizing some sort of credit card points in order to redeem some portion of the trip at a lower cost. And so I was able to take a lot of really cool trips, a lot of them out of the country, last year in 2025. But of course, I learned some things along the way. And one of the first things that I was reminded of, and that I would like to remind our audience of and you of, is the fact that you can utilize work trips as points earning opportunities. And so when it comes to the world of credit card points and travel hacking and trying to redeem trips for lower reduced prices, one of the things that you have to do is earn a lot of credit card points. And then, of course, the second part is redeeming those credit card points for good value. As you have realized already, not every trip is going to lend you the opportunity to redeem points, but almost every trip will give you the opportunity to earn points. And how do you earn points? Well, you basically pay for things in cash and you utilize the right credit card to pay for it. And so my first point here is that work trips oftentimes can be really good points earning opportunities. And this was the case for me around this time last year. I actually took a work trip to Puerto Rico. How blessed am I? I basically had one of the researchers at my institution say, "Hey, Alicia, I know you're working on this research project. There is a yearly conference in Puerto Rico, and I can't make it this year. I know that you're doing this awesome project. Do you mind going in my place and presenting your research at this conference?" And I was like, well, I guess I can make time to go to Puerto Rico in the winter and take time off work. Of course, I guess maybe I can fit it into my schedule. But I was, needless to say, very happy to go. I had been to Puerto Rico before, but it had been a long time. So it was nice to kind of go back. The weather was amazing. It was like 80 degrees and the hotel was very nice. I was able to book the flight via Delta. So I travel a lot through Delta. That's kind of my airline of choice, mainly because I live in Atlanta and it's a Delta hub. And so one of the cool things about that trip is because it was a work trip, of course, my job reimbursed me for the cost. And because I flew on Delta, it sort of counted towards my Delta status. And I was able to earn platinum Delta status last year through all the flights that I took. And so that was really cool for me. Maybe someone listening, maybe you're contemplating going to a conference. Maybe you're contemplating using your CME money to travel somewhere for some sort of educational opportunity. And I would encourage you to take that trip. Maybe this would be a great opportunity for you to earn some points. And so for me, one of the things that I love to do when I'm able is get a cash advance for my job. I know a lot of people have jobs that will reimburse them for expenses, but one of the things that I try to do is get a cash advance. And so my job gives me the money in advance. And usually they will give me the money in advance for like a registration fee and for hotels. And then when I come back, they'll reimburse me for the cost of the flight and the cost of food and things like that. But usually when I'm able to get a cash advance, it prevents me from having to utilize some of my money up front and I can utilize their money. But of course, I'm paying for things on my credit cards. And so it's like I'm able to use their money to pay for things on my credit card and I get to earn the points and I get to earn the flight status. And so that's kind of my first point or reminder for folks is to try to utilize work trips as points earning opportunities.
Yeah, I love that. And although I don't leverage the points for redemption as much as you do, I go on a decent number of trips for work or just presenting at conferences. And then I get CME reimbursement. So I wholeheartedly agree with this. And it's interesting because sometimes when I'm thinking about the credit cards, and this is a little bit of a segue, but when I think about the credit cards and how much like the annual fees are, and then the fact that I'm not actually redeeming the points, I'm like, is earning the points actually worth it? And you have shown me that it is, but than my own behaviors. I think that's one of the things is when you see other people doing things, we aspire to do them ourselves, right? But if we are not taking the action, then there's always this question of would it be more beneficial for me to just get like a 2% cash back?
That's a great question. And I really do think that the answer might differ for each person.
Hmm.
Like for me, it makes sense because I travel a lot and I'm able to find pretty good redemptions. But for somebody who maybe doesn't travel as much or, doesn't redeem them as much or finds it more difficult, then maybe it might make sense to just get the cash back and utilize the cash that you get from the cash back to
Hmm.
just pay for trips in cash. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I know a lot of people who kind of do a combination of both. Maybe they utilize more of a cashback card for their business or their medical practice and they utilize maybe points earning cards for their personal travel. I know some people who only do cash back, and depending on which cashback cards they get, they may be able to get cards that, at least for a short period of time, earn them up to 3% cash back in some cases. And so I really do think that it depends on your behavior. You got to do the math because in certain times in your life, maybe it does make sense to do more cash back, especially if you're somebody who maybe doesn't travel as much.
Yeah.
But for someone like me who does travel a lot, who is able to get some pretty awesome flight redemptions, as we'll talk about later, especially when it comes to international travel, right now somehow I come out ahead utilizing the credit card points, but the answer may change based on my own life.
Yeah, yeah. No, thank you for at least affirming that there are different modalities of redemption and earning. And this is something where the reflection piece is often missed when we're trying to get the most value for something, but really understanding that value means what makes the most sense in the phase of life that you're in right now.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so the next trip that I took in 2025 was to the Bahamas. And my point with this trip is that travel does not have to be expensive. So I went to the Bahamas as a part of a cruise. One of my friends was getting married and she had her bachelorette party on a cruise. And I was shocked by how cheap this cruise was. It was a group of us girls and I shared a room with one of my friends from med school. I think we paid $450 per person. Now, the cruise was not long. It was like a 3-night cruise, one of those weekend sort of trips. But of course, whenever you go on a cruise, your lodging is included in that cost and your meals are included in that cost. Now, depending on which cruise ship you choose, some of them will have luxury restaurants that cost a little bit more. But for the most part, I was kind of shocked at the ability to spend less than $500 for 3 nights of lodging and all meals included, and also be able to have a really good time with my friends. And I think when you add in all the ancillary fees, I even bought the alcohol package. We did like a 1-day excursion off of the boat. The cruise took off from Florida, which is where I'm originally from. But of course, I had to fly from Atlanta, where I live now, to Florida. But when I include all of those costs, the cost of the round trip flight to and from Florida, the actual cost of the cruise, the cost of the excursion, the cost of the drink package and restaurants and all of that, I think total I spent less than $1,000. I was kind of shocked at how relatively cheap that trip and that experience was. And so that was my point to people, is that travel doesn't have to be expensive. Like, I was still able to have a really good time with some amazing people and not really spend that much money. I mean, I know people who spend more than $1,000 on a round trip flight from one end of the country to the other. And so the fact that I could do like a 3-night vacation, if you will, with some of my friends for less than that was really amazing to me.
Yeah, I spent more than $1,000 going down the street. Now, it wasn't down the street. It was an hour away, but it was still very close. So, yeah, this just shows you what you can do if you budget for it and if you plan. And I think leveraging some of those group discounts, especially when you're going on a cruise or having some type of activity like that, it never hurts to ask. The payoff can be tremendous. So, I applaud you. $450, like, girl, please, I'll sign up. Help me.
Yeah, yeah. So that was great. I was able to have a really good time with some friends and not spend that much money. The next trip that I took in 2025 was to Costa Rica. I actually went for one of my best friends' birthdays. She usually likes to take a trip around March, which is when her birthday is, and she wanted to go to Costa Rica. And I actually debated not going on this trip because, I had already gone to several other trips earlier in the year and I was a little tired, but I really wanted to support my friend. And it ended up being a fantastic decision. I had not been to Costa Rica before, so it was my first time there. And the kind of trip that she wanted was sort of a mix of like adventure with relaxation. And I was like, how is that possible? How can we fit this in? But she's very outdoorsy. And so she wanted to go rafting and she wanted to go ziplining, but that she also wanted to be pampered. And so she wanted to go to the hot spring. She wanted to have a massage, but not necessarily go to a spa. She wanted to bring the masseuse to us. She wanted to have a nice meal, but she didn't necessarily want to go to a restaurant. She wanted a chef to come to the house. And that was my first time being part of a trip where we did those things. Usually, when I travel, I like to stay in hotels because I usually have some sort of hotel status. But she really loves Airbnb. She's like, we all need our own room. We all need our own bathroom. Let's do Airbnb. And it ended up working out. Like, we probably spent a lot less doing the Airbnb than if we would have tried to book different hotel rooms. And the cost of the chef coming to us, the cost of the masseuse coming to us was actually not that expensive. And so my point here is to step outside your comfort zone and try new things. If you're somebody who likes to be adventurous, maybe that's the kind of vacation that you would prefer and want to plan. But if you want to be pampered and you want to still take a vacation, maybe consider having some of those people come to the place where you're staying. I always assumed that having a personal chef come would be really expensive, but it actually wasn't. I tend not to do Airbnbs because I think, oh, well, the money that you might save in the actual cost, you might then have to pay in fees from the cleaning people or whatever. And so I wasn't really sure that it was going to be a good deal. And so for me, I kind of learned to step outside my comfort zone and try new things, look back into Airbnb or some of these other platforms to see if you can get a better deal when it comes to lodging, and realize that you don't always have to go to a spa. Sometimes you can bring those people to you and it may not be as expensive as you might assume.
I haven't taken a trip like this myself, but I know of people who have taken trips like this, and I agree they have thoroughly enjoyed it. I also think that the intimacy of just being in your own space, being comfortable and having someone come to you adds a level of luxury, adds a level of connection that you wouldn't get in a restaurant. So even if it is maybe even just a bit more expensive than going out to eat, you get that additional value, which I can appreciate. And I'm glad that it was both and because sometimes it's like all soft life, where I'm just going to sit here by the beach. I'm not going to explore. But for me, when I've gone to a place that I've never been to, I love to explore. I want to eat where the locals are, have my azithromycin in my back pocket just in case because I'm eating street food and all of these things. Not to say that it is like a scarcity mindset, but some of it could be potentially driven by a little bit of scarcity of like, oh, I don't know when the next time I'm going to come back to this place. So let me just really embrace the fullness of what it has to offer, the tourist side of things, and also getting a very authentic kind of residential local experience. So I'm glad that you were able to do both and that you were open minded enough to say yes, because it sounds fantastic. I mean, I would like to go on that trip. Give me the itinerary.
Yeah, no, it was a fun trip. It was a fun trip for sure. The next trip that I took shortly after, maybe like a few weeks later, was to Louisville, Kentucky. I needed to go to this work trip. I think it was our annual sports medicine conference. And my point here was that sometimes you can combine work trips with leisure. And that's what I did with this one. So I actually invited some of my friends that I knew, whether it was from medical school or residency. And I was like, hey, there's this conference. These are the dates. See if you can use some CME days to take off from work. And then you can meet me there. And of course, we can go to some of the sessions, but we can also eat up afterwards and go to bars and kind of go out and have dinner. And that's what we did. I invited some of my close friends who were able to meet me there. My boyfriend met me there. And so it was awesome. We were just like meeting up with people, learning a little bit during the day, and then going out, dancing and things like that at night. And of course, it did count against my vacation time at work because I was able to utilize my CME days. So, Brittany, I know you and I are physicians and we oftentimes get those CME days, right? Continuing medical education days where our job will give us additional days off that are not counted against our vacation, but they'll give us additional days off to utilize to go to conferences. And so my point here is that sometimes you can utilize those days not only for the conference, but also for some leisure time and a mini vacation, whether it's meeting up with friends, meeting up with a partner, meeting up with colleagues that have moved to different areas. And so that is sort of like one of the things that I really enjoy doing. And I don't know if it's one of the things that you do as well. Do you kind of use conferences to combine a little leisure time with educational time?
Oh, yeah. We've been double dipping since we started dating, girl. We are what, like 14 years in the game of double dipping. So we often do it. Now we don't do it as much because it requires that we have childcare, et cetera. But, if you think about the total expense of a trip, you have the food and you have the plane ticket, but the lodging can often be quite expensive. And so even if there's a way for us to get that portion covered for my husband's conference and I'm tagging along, I may not have anything to do in that city. I may just go for a run and sleep in a hotel room. For me, that is a vacation in it. So we always try to think about how can we double up on these experiences, maybe extend the hotel stay for an additional day since it's already covered. And if my flight is going to be covered through CME expenses, et cetera, then why not? And another way that we do this is we leverage business expenses, right? So my husband, his private practice is private practice for psychiatry. So if he's going to a psychiatric conference, he might cover a portion of that using CME funds, but the rest of that might be a business deduction. And so how can we kind of lever up? How can we kind of double up on using both the business expense and also some of the CME coverage?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's nice to know that you're doing that. It seems like you and your husband have already figured that one out. You're like, okay, you're going to get off these days. I'm going to get off these days. And we're going to go to this conference in quotation marks. We're going to do a couple workshops and then we're going to spend some time away from the kids. So
Exactly.
I love that. I love that. My next point is that you might be able to utilize the status of others or maybe the unknown status that you have yourself to make your trip even more luxurious. So, what do I mean by that? So, the next trip that I took in 2025 was to Jamaica. So, the friend whose bachelorette trip we did on the cruise, she got married that year as well. And she got married in Jamaica. She's Jamaican, so she wanted to get married in her home country. And one of the things that I really loved is that I was able to utilize her status to get some some perks at the resort. Someone close in her family has status with the resort. Maybe they had purchased part of a timeshare or something. I'm not quite sure all of the details, but essentially they lended me their status. And what that meant was as soon as we pulled up to the resort, they were like, oh, no, 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 no. You get to check in this other area, have a seat. We'll give you a drink. And I was like, what? Did I pay for this? And, they gave us like spa credits, resort credits, and excursion credits. And I was like, oh, this is very nice. We had our room in a different part of the resort that was like newly renovated. I was like, oh man, I could get used to this. Tell your mom I said thank you. And so that was really nice. And then, even on the travel, on the way there, I think we've talked about this before, Brittany, but one of my credit cards, I think you have the same one, right? The American Express Platinum card gives you access to the Delta lounges and the American Express Centurion lounges. And so on our way there, I checked into the Centurion lounge and got really nice breakfast and had some awesome little cocktails. And I was feeling nice on the plane. When I scanned my ticket, they were like, oh, you've been upgraded. And I was like, oh, I love a complimentary upgrade. Okay. Then, I wasn't sitting in main cabin anymore. I was sitting in Comfort Plus, a little bit more room, a little bit better service, getting in and off the plane a little bit quicker, which allowed me to kind of get through customs faster. I had Priority Pass, which I think comes with the American Express card. And so that allows you, at least in Jamaica, I believe, to like get through customs a lot faster. And so one thing about me, I don't like waiting in lines. And so anything that can help me cut the line, whether it's TSA pre-check or some sort of status or whatever, but from the beginning to end, right? From being able to utilize the lounge when I arrived to the airport, from being complimentary upgraded, from getting through customs faster to getting all of these perks once we arrived to the resort, I was able to utilize some of the status that I had for my credit cards and also the status of others, my friend's mom in this case, to sort of make my stay more luxurious without paying more money.
Well, I'm thinking I need better friends. No, I'm just kidding. I love my friends. That sounds fantastic, Leisha. I'm super excited to just hear and learn of all of your travels. I'm living vicariously through you during this episode. And I have a question for you because, yes, we have the same credit card. I use the lounges probably less than you do. And the main reason is because I don't arrive to the airport early to actually sit down and like enjoy my drink. I might go through the lounge to get cookie or something to throw in my bag. But otherwise, I'm not spending a significant amount of time. So how do you travel? Like what time do you get to the airport? You make it a priority to get there early so that you can go and have the lounge experience? Or is a lounge experience kind of like what I do is like, oh, there's a delay. So let me go into this lounge here.
So I do not get to the airport very early. Actually, I am just like you, where I want to get there right in time. Now, usually I aim to get to the airport if it's a domestic flight between an hour and an hour and a half early.
Oh, yeah, that's real early.
And I have status with Delta so that I don't have to wait in the lines if I am checking a bag, which a lot of times on a domestic flight, I'm not checking a bag, but if I am, there's no line there. And then I have TSA pre-check with digital ID, which I don't know if every airport does digital ID, but it's like a separate line. It's separate from TSA pre-check and it's separate from clear. It never has a line. And so I get through the airport for the most part pretty quickly. By the time I go through TSA and all of that stuff, maybe I might have 40 minutes before I board, 30, 40 minutes. Now, I could go straight to the gate, but oftentimes I'll go to the lounge for about 30 minutes or so. When I was living in LA, actually, I would get to the airport like 45 minutes to an hour before my flight. But a lot of the times, especially on a lot of these trips, I have been traveling with somebody else. I found that people are not always as comfortable getting to the airport just in the nick of time like I am, or maybe they don't have the status that I do. And so they have to wait in one of the lines a little bit longer than I do. And so when I'm traveling with somebody else, they like to get there a little bit sooner. If I might get there for a domestic flight around an hour ahead of time, they might prefer an hour and a half. And so then I'm spending a little bit more time in the lounge. But I will say most times when I'm in the lounge, it's about 15, 20 minutes, max around 30, 45 minutes. I'm not spending a long time in the lounge. And I certainly am not going to leave my house earlier just so I can spend more time in the lounge. But usually if I'm traveling with somebody else, they prefer to get there just a few minutes earlier. And so I end up by default getting to the airport a little bit sooner than I need. And of course, it comes in handy with delays and cancellations. I think it was last year where there were all these like cancellations around a holiday. I can't remember which one. But if you have access to the lounge, oftentimes there are gate assistants within the lounge that can help you a lot sooner than the folks who work with the airlines right by the gate, if that makes sense. Sometimes there are airline personnel, should I say, that are in the lounge. And so it allows you to get help with your flight a lot sooner without having to wait in a line. And so I think having lounge access can provide some benefits that way as well.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm kind of like arrive to the boarding location at the time of boarding, or let me kick off my shoes and ask a couple of people in the TSA pre-check line so I can run because the doors will be closing. We definitely travel differently, and I have to really evaluate my behaviors a bit more and say, okay, is this credit card like really serving me? Because I don't use all of the perks like you. I got to embody my inner Alicia. So tell us about the last trip that you want to share as far as points. I know you've gone on so many more trips.
Well, I know you have kids, and people with kids, I think, feel very similarly to you when it comes to lounge access because oftentimes, although you may have lounge access, you may not have access for your kids.
Mhm.
And so I have heard from several people who like to travel with credit card points and utilize points for travel and all of that, who with kids, it may not make as much sense because oftentimes they can't get into the lounge. Now, some credit cards will give you some guest passes and things like that, but I can totally hear what you're saying. And I think that if I had young kids and I oftentimes traveled with them, then I may not utilize it as much. And
Yeah.
so I totally hear where you are coming from. You know, one of the other really cool trips that I took last year was to Japan. My point here is that sometimes last minute trips can net you some of the best deals because I did not plan on going to Japan that year and I only had decided to go maybe a few months in advance. I like to go somewhere around my birthday. I had some extra days off from work, some vacation days, and at my job my vacation days do not roll over. And so if I didn't utilize them, I would just lose them essentially. And so I was like, oh, let me take a trip. And I was thinking about different places that I wanted to go. And my boyfriend was like, oh, I've always wanted to go to Japan. And I was like, okay, let's see, what we can find. And fortunately, we were able to find some really awesome deals. Now, usually when I am traveling internationally, I prefer to fly business class. And usually I can transfer out some credit card points to one of these international airlines and get a really great business class flight deal. Because I had decided to go to Japan sort of late in the game, if you will, only a few months prior to the trip, I wasn't able to find really awesome business class flight deals that were convenient for me. Now, sometimes when you are looking for an international flight, you can take what's called a positioning flight. What does that mean? So let's say, Brittany, you live in Boston, right? Maybe you can't find a really good international flight from Boston to Greece, for example, or from Boston to Japan, for example. But let's say you can find a really good flight from Seattle to Japan or from LA to Japan. What some people will do is take a positioning flight. So they will fly, in your case, from Boston to Seattle or from Boston to LA, and then take the flight from LA to Japan, if you will. So they're flying to a different city in the United States. And then from that city is where they will take the business class flight internationally. As I'm saying this to say that for Japan, if this is on your bucket list, oftentimes you can find some really good flights to Japan from the West Coast. So from LA, from San Francisco, from Seattle. Of course, I live in Atlanta. And although I did find some decent flights to Japan from the West Coast cities, it just like didn't align with our travel itinerary. Would have had to leave like on a Tuesday or Wednesday, like during the week. And I really had a specific amount of days off and I had already kind of secured hotels for, a Saturday through a Saturday trip. And I just really didn't want to like change the trip too much. And so my point of saying that is like, I did not book that business class flight deal like I would have normally done because I didn't want to go through all the positioning and changing all of the days off and all of that stuff. And so what I did, this is one of the rare instances where I booked the flight through the American Express travel portal. And that is because if you have an American Express business platinum card, whenever you redeem points through the travel, you get a 35% points rebate. What does that mean? That means if you spend 100,000 points for a flight, American Express will give you 35,000 points back as a rebate. And so I went with that sort of deal because I was able to book a pretty cheap flight via Delta on the American Express travel portal. And then, of course, get 35% of my points back. And because I had Delta status, Delta actually upgraded us complimentary. And so then we were able to get upgraded, I think, to Comfort Plus or Premium Select, actually, to and from our trip to Japan. And so that's my point there is like sometimes you can find some really good flight deals. And even if it may not be the business class flight with the bed on the plane seats, Premium Select was pretty awesome. We had a lot of room. We were able to recline our seats more than the average person. We had lots of foot room, and it was actually a pleasant flight experience. And then I think I had talked about this before, but when it comes to hotels, I was not sure I was going to be able to find some really good hotels. And oftentimes when you're flying or when you're traveling internationally, lodging can be one of your biggest costs aside from the flight. But I was able to find some really awesome hotel deals on Hyatt. And so for that, I kind of utilized my Chase points. So I have a Chase credit card and I transferred points from the Chase credit card system to World of Hyatt. So I transferred those points to the World of Hyatt. And then I was able to find a lot of really awesome hotels in Tokyo and in Kyoto that were Hyatt hotels, and they had really good redemption values. I didn't pay any money out of pocket for any of our hotels for the 7 nights that we spent in Japan. We did a few different hotels because I wanted wanted to explore different cities in Tokyo. We had an awesome experience. I think for one of the hotels, we booked a suite that was pretty affordable, which came with free breakfast. And we had executive lounge access in the hotel. I didn't even know hotels had lounge access, but that was a thing. One of them gave us like spa credits and we went to the spa and had massages. And it was just awesome experience. During that trip, we went to Disneyland and all of that. And I don't even have any status in the Hyatt hotel program. I was just able to find really good redemption values. And so that is my point, is that oftentimes in the credit card points world, it is well known that if you are able to plan your travel in advance, think about a year in advance, you're able to snag a lot of the really good flight deals and a lot of the really good hotel deals. And that is awesome. But not everybody is able to plan their travel a year in advance. And if you are not, just like for this trip, I did not, you can still find some really decent deals. So I was able in this case, again, to find some really good flight deals and really good hotel deals. And so I didn't actually spend that much money out of pocket for this trip.
Okay, so if you all are listening, like I'm listening, you're like, okay, Leisha, can I hire you? Consultation, teach me your ways. I actually don't have the answer to that question. So, okay, Leisha, can we hire you to plan our trips? My gosh.
It takes a lot of effort sometimes to find some of these really good deals. But I think I had mentioned to you before that, like, if I were you, Brittany, and I had kids and I wanted to travel with my kids, I would strongly consider World of Hyatt because you are able to redeem some of your Chase points to book suites. And I think we talked about this before. Like
Hmm.
when you're traveling with kids, they go to bed at like 8 p.m. And then if
Hmm.
you don't book a suite, then you and your husband are also going to sleep at 8 p.m.
Hmm.
If you could book a suite where there's separate rooms and the kids can go to sleep and you and your husband can stay awake. And with Hyatt, you can book suites without having to have any sort of Hyatt status. And depending on the hotel chain, the suites can be pretty affordable. That is the case. But of course, if you're able to plan your travel in advance, oftentimes you can find even better deals. I think I had already mentioned on an earlier episode that one of the last trips that I took last year was to Greece and Turkey on a cousin's cruise. And we planned that like 2 years in advance. And because we planned it 2 years in advance, we were able to find and get all of these discounts. And I did have really awesome flights to Greece and really just a great time with my family. And so whether you are able to plan really far in advance, like I was for that trip to Greece, or whether you're planning, a few months in advance, like I was for that trip to Tokyo, oftentimes you still are able to find some decent deals. Like I don't want people to lose hope if they think, oh, I can't plan my trip way in advance, or I don't have the flexibility to plan a last minute trip. Usually there's some wiggle room there and you can still find decent deals, and don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Oftentimes you can still find some pretty good flight deals no matter where you want to go for a lot of folks.
That's very helpful. I thought about you recently in discussing the world of Hyatt because I'm going to a conference. So, with a conference, they have various affiliated hotels that they've contracted with for room reservations. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to set this up with the Hyatt. I'm going to choose the Hyatt. I'm just going to like rip off the bandage, get started, start accumulating points, have the experience, learn a little bit more. So, thank you for that introduction. And I hope that we'll be able to utilize some of this in the future. And definitely Japan is on our list. The school that Brooke goes to is like the Japanese designated school. We have a lot of Japanese people who live in our community. And so sometimes they don't always speak fluent English. And so they have the Japanese aid and support there. And even in her music class, like they're teaching some Japanese songs and things of that nature. So she has a few of her friends who are from Japan. So that is on our list. But because it's so far, it gives me a bit of pause of traveling with children, especially for KJ, at this young age going such a far distance. And so I still am trying to figure out how to get on a flight with them that's longer than 4 hours. So maybe as they grow a bit older.
Yeah, you gotta work them up. Maybe try Caribbean, see how they do on that flight, and if you can find a really good deal, I know a lot of folks who travel with kids, that is one of their motivators, trying to get the business class seats because it comes with a bed on the plane, and so
Mhm.
then their kids can sleep, and that oftentimes can make things a lot easier. I will say, I know you mentioned going to conferences and booking the conference lodging at Hyatt. Oftentimes they have different hotel chains that they partner with, and you mentioned Hyatt. I will say, sometimes when it comes to conferences, I will book with Hilton,
Mm.
and that is because your American Express Platinum card usually comes with Hilton Gold status. And Hilton Gold status, domestically at least, usually comes with like a $15 or $30 like beverage credit. You might get some eligible upgrade. I think it also comes with Marriott Gold status as well. And so it really just depends on what you're going for. Like, are you trying to build up your amount of Hyatt points so that you can redeem them for a suite when you travel with your family? Then I think it makes sense. Is your goal conversely to see if you can reduce some of the costs of food and drinks and stuff when you're at the hotel, in which case you might want to utilize your Hilton Gold status and book a Hilton hotel? So I really do think that it depends on like what your goal for that particular trip is. If you're like me, you're not necessarily loyal to one hotel chain versus another. And so you have a few more options there. You can't go wrong either way, but just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. Cause sometimes my priority is look, I'm trying to get that drink beverage credit. And then other times I'm like, okay, I need to build up my Hyatt points. So let me book this, conference at Hyatt Hotel.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. And I think when I go on more personal trips, I use the Hilton credit because we're trying to pay for the things. Most of the conferences I go to supply breakfast, even if it's just like a continental breakfast, but food for thought for sure. So, Alicia, thank you for always keeping us abreast on how to use our points more effectively and to redeem them to create more joy in our lives. All right. So now let's talk a little bit about our fun money. Alicia, how are you spending your money for fun? We talked about all your travel. So something outside of travel.
Yeah, yeah. So, it's either traveling or eating. For me, it was meeting up with a good friend. I love sushi. One of my favorite sushi restaurants is on Resi. And of course, on our American Express Platinum cards, we have a Resi credit. And so I was like talking with one of my friends, like, we should meet up. And she was like, we should. And I was like, okay, let me pick a Resi restaurant because it comes with like $100 quarterly credit. So I was like, oh, I can eat at my favorite sushi restaurant, which is a little on the pricey side. And I can get basically $100 off the total cost, which ended up being more than enough. And so we had fantastic sushi. We had a great catch up girl session. She's telling me about work and her personal life and dating and all of the things. And I was just living vicariously through her fun life as well. And so that is sort of how I use my money for fun and use this credit card perk that I had as well.
Yay, I love that. I'm not using any credit card perks, but I should probably think about it. When I find some free time instead of scrolling to ease my mind, maybe I should scroll through the Amex credit card portal. I am buying new outfits. So I bought some things, but I'm also getting one kind of custom designed for me. So I'm really excited
Ooh.
for it. Yeah, to be shipped in the mail. And sometimes it's more affordable just to have someone to make it to your body type. I did that with one outfit that I found. I really liked the design, but it was on Temu or something. And I don't know how y'all feel about Temu. I know some people really like kind of the fast fashion, but I'm not a fast fashion type of girl. I like to buy quality pieces that I could wear for a period of time. And so it's like, okay, I really like this style, but I know that the quality is just not going to be that great. At least that has been my experience for the things that I've purchased on some of those cheaper sites. So anywho, so I got it custom made and it's a really great piece. It's one of a kind. So nobody else is going to have on your outfit because you pick the fabric, you pick the color, you pick the fit. And so I'm going to get another piece made like that. So I'm wear it to a conference and feel all confident in my presentations, etc.
Oh, that's really nice. I did not know that custom outfits could be affordable. You have just taught me something new. And I think I'm going to need your plug. Like, what? You just found somebody who can like make you custom clothes. You're like, these are my measurements. This is what I want. How much is it going to be? Like, what? Tell us exactly how you did this.
So it really started out when I was in Atlanta. Y'all know I'm an entrepreneur. I have like a million things going on. So I had designed a hair accessory tool to stretch natural hair without heat. And I needed someone to help me with the prototype because it requires sewing, but I can't sew. So the one that I did, I like used glue and like safety pins. It was very ugly, right? But I needed someone to sew it so that I could send it out and have it tested in the marketplace. I found this woman and then she designed a dress for me for our baby shower. And then after I was like, okay, can you make me another one? So it's a woman actually in Conyers who we've had a relationship with for like 8 years.
I don't know if she's looking for more clients, but
Yeah, she's not, but I'm happy to spread it along. She might know other bankers like seamstress know other seamstress, right? And yeah, it's pretty affordable. And so I typically find like these high end, high fashion or like extremely cheap designs that the quality is not going to be good or, oh, this is outside of my price point and trying to find a middle ground to get either a better quality outfit of a design that I really like or a more affordable one of a design that I really like.
so do you pick out the fabric and then send it to her? And then does she automatically know how to sew it? Or do you need to actually send her like the, I don't know, sewing plans, if you will?
No, I don't send any like plans or that's not what they're called. My gosh, if someone's a seamstress or listening to this, they know because you can buy them at Joann. So I don't purchase those. Most of the seamstress that I hire are very seasoned. And so they've been sewing for years. So they don't need a pattern. That's what it's called, the pattern. So they don't need a pattern for the design design, I just send them a picture of the design and they might have a similar pattern. So if it's like a peplum top, they might have another top. And so they can kind of use that to design the pattern that they need for my custom piece. And no, I don't send the materials either because, they're long distance. They'll just go to the store and shop the materials for me, send me pictures. I'll send them kind of like the type of colors that I want. If it's something where it's a more vibrant color, then I'll tell them that. And then the type of materials, if I want it to be more like a winter heavier weighted material. And usually I go for the heavier weighted materials because I think that they are better quality. But just because it's heavier weight doesn't mean that it has to be hot or warm. So I just give them some specifics of the type of materials that I'm interested in. And then they go to the store and they send me some pictures and they buy it. And then the price is kind of like all included.
That is great. I'm going to need that plug. So please ask them if they, have other people that they know in Atlanta or elsewhere that are willing to do this. Cause what? All right, Brittany with the custom made clothes. I gotta tell you, it's given I might be rich or I am rich, but I'm trying to be subtle about it. I don't know that many people that get custom clothes and like send designs. But I think that's great because, like you, I'm trying to like move away from fast fashion now. The only time I order fast fashion is if I'm part of a bachelorette party or something and they send me a link because they want everybody to wear the same thing. But I love that because oftentimes they have really awesome styles on there. And I'm like, man, if only it was good material.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have come up with a solution for my problem. So thank you, Brittany. I did not anticipate that today. And I'm sure somebody listening was like, oh, I got to get Brittany's plug.
Yeah. I mean, I also shop at TJ Maxx, people. So, not all of my clothes are custom made.
The fact that that is like a thing that you do, though, I think is really like just boss. And so I love that for you. I got to see what piece that they are making for you, what outfit they're making for you. So you got to send us photos.
Yes, will do, will do. All right. Well, Leisha, thank you again for sharing all of your travel tips. And, I think we need a webinar. I need a click by click. Hey, here's your credit card. Log into your credit card portal. This is what you do type of thing. So, people, if you want that as well, then give this podcast a thumbs up, subscribe, send it over to your friend, and let's see if we can convince Leisha to do one of these things for us.
You know what? We are going to solve this problem because I think in an upcoming episode, we're going to bring somebody on who does help folks find great deals and can help folks like you who have families. And so hopefully we will be able to bring our audience that episode and you that episode very soon.
Yay. All right. Thanks for listening.
Hello, everybody. It's me, Brooke. I'm recording a little disclaimer for my mommy, Dr. Brittany Halford, and her friend, Dr. Lisa Taylor. Just so you know, they're not financial advisors, tax professionals, lawyers, or financial planners. Everything you hear is for education and entertainment. It's not strict financial advice, So use your best judgment, chat with a tax professional, and all those other people that you need to talk to. Thanks for tuning in today. Keep cruising on your journey to wealth and wellness. Bye-bye.